March 1945, Camp Harmon, Arizona. The sun beat down in relentless waves, the air quivering with heat that tasted like iron. Otto Weber, 24, stepped off the transport truck, wrists sore from the coarse rope bindings, eyes squinting against the brightness that seemed unnatural, even hostile. He had been told of the cruelty awaiting him, the starvation, the intimidation, the unthinkable humiliation. But what greeted him was something far stranger. The desert stretched endlessly, red dust swirling in eddies around the truck tires, and beyond the chain-link fences, the flat horizon shimmered like a mirage. The other men stumbled down behind him, 19 in all, soldiers and conscripts from across Europe. Their faces were pale, eyes hollowed by months of marches and hunger, each of them clinging to the rigid discipline instilled by years of fear. They had trained to obey orders, to endure suffering without complaint, to die rather than submit. Otto's father had told him that Americans were monsters who would break any man who stood before them, and yet here they were, surrounded by the quiet of the desert, no guards shouting, no dogs barking, no threats, only silence, thick and unyielding. A woman approached, her uniform crisp, her hair pinned tightly beneath a cap. Lieutenant Ruth Nakamura, Japanese-American, Otto noticed instantly, with eyes sharp as obsidian. Her voice, when she spoke in fluent German, was calm, almost soothing. "Willkommen, Camp Harmon. Follow me for processing. No yelling, no hands raised in anger. You will be treated as prisoners of war. Nothing more, nothing less." Confusion rippled through the group. Otto felt the tension in his chest tighten. There was no theater, no pretense. She carried herself with the precision of someone trained to command, yet her presence lacked the menace they had been warned about. Processing was meticulous. Bunk assignments in neat wooden barracks, a bed with a thin mattress that felt impossibly soft, a small bar of soap placed neatly on the pillow. Otto lifted it, expecting some hidden trap, half expecting it to burn his skin or vanish into smoke, but it was simply soap. By 1700 hours, the bell rang for the first meal. Otto joined the others, hands trembling, ready for watery gruel or dry bread. What he received instead made him stop mid-step. A tray of chocolate squares, individually wrapped, their dark sheen catching the harsh light. The aroma was intoxicating, sweet and alien. "Chocolate," he whispered, tasting the word like a forbidden incantation. His stomach clenched. The other men froze, unsure, their instincts screaming caution. He barely had time to digest the shock when one of the older POWs, Klaus Richter, batted the square from Otto's hand. "Don't touch it," Klaus hissed, eyes wide. "It's poisoned. Americans put poison in everything. That's how they get you. You'll die if you eat that." And then Lieutenant Nakamura sat at the table across from them, unwrapping her own chocolate with deliberate calm, breaking off a piece and tasting it. Otto blinked, unsure whether to believe what his eyes were showing. Her gaze met his, steady and unyielding, and she spoke. "Geneva Convention, Article 26. Prisoners of war are entitled to the same rations as your captors. This includes chocolate and other non-essential rations when available. You will not be harmed. This is law, not mercy." Otto's world tilted. Poisoned chocolate? That was a lie. Everything they had been taught about Americans being cruel and vengeful, everything, crumbled on the bitter sweetness of a single square. He felt a tremor run through his body, a cocktail of disbelief, relief, and the faintest tinge of guilt. That night, Otto hid a square in his coat pocket. He didn't know why, only that he had to keep it. It felt like a secret too large, too heavy, too important to ignore. And as he lay on the thin mattress, chocolate in hand, the desert night pressing against the barracks walls, he wondered if survival would always feel like betrayal. The next morning Otto woke to the clang of the breakfast bell. The chocolate from the night before still weighed in his coat pocket like a secret promise. He hadn't touched it, hadn't even unwrapped it, but the very knowledge that it existed made his stomach flutter with unease. Around him, other POWs approached their trays with suspicion, eyeing the buttered toast, boiled eggs, and small squares of chocolate as if each bite might be a trap. Klaus sat across from him, eyes sharp, jaw tight. "Did you eat any of it?" he demanded, voice low and harsh. Otto shook his head. I saved it," he admitted. Klaus's glare could have cut stone. "You don't save poison, Otto. That's how they get you. You trust them, and it's over." Otto didn't argue. He only watched as Klaus lifted his square slowly, sniffed it, and then threw it back onto the tray with a disgusted huff. Lieutenant Nakamura moved through the hall with mechanical efficiency, clipboard in hand, recording arrivals and monitoring behaviors. She noticed the men's hesitation, their mistrust of even the most basic rations, and made a note without comment. For her, this was routine. For the prisoners, it was incomprehensible. Americans were supposed to be cruel, she had told them. But here they were, offering comfort instead of punishment. By noon, the men were assigned to work details, scrubbing floors, stacking firewood, and cleaning the mess hall. Otto noticed that even labor came with care. Gloves were provided, tasks were rotated, no one shouted, no one struck, and yet the chocolate remained in his pocket, untouched, a reminder of a world he had never imagined. During a rare lull in the sun, Otto sneaked the chocolate from his pocket, unwrapped it carefully, and examined it like a jeweler inspecting a rare gem. Its smooth surface reflected the harsh sunlight, dark and glossy, almost impossible in its perfection. His hand trembled, not from hunger, but from disbelief. Could it be real? Would he dare to eat it? A shadow fell across the barracks bench. It was Lieutenant Nakamura, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp. "Curious about the chocolate?" she asked in German, her tone flat, factual. Otto froze, unsure how to answer. She crouched slightly, lowering herself to his level. "It is safe. Nothing in this camp is intended to harm you. Geneva Convention. Article 26. You may eat it." Otto's pulse raced. Safe? How could something so sweet, so foreign, be safe? The idea of American generosity felt like treason to every lesson he had been taught. Yet the temptation, mingled with a strange hope, was unbearable. He broke a piece off and let it melt slowly on his tongue. The taste, rich, cocoa-laden, almost sinful, overwhelmed him. For the first time in months, a shiver of pure, unguarded pleasure ran through his body. Around him, whispers and hushed laughter rose as other POWs cautiously unwrapped their own pieces. Some hesitated, unsure if their taste buds could trust this new world. Others, emboldened by Otto's example, took tentative bites, eyes wide as disbelief turned to delight. Even Klaus, the skeptic, eventually crumbled a square, his expression betraying a reluctant wonder. For Otto, that first bite was more than chocolate. It was a revelation, a fracture in the foundation of everything he had believed. If chocolate could be safe, could food, kindness, even law itself also defy expectation? Could survival exist without betrayal? The questions churned like molten chocolate in his mind, bitter and sweet all at once. Days passed, and the chocolate incident became a quiet ritual among the prisoners. Each morning, the men received their small squares, neatly portioned, and each morning they faced the same dilemma: eat or resist. Some hid theirs, unable to reconcile pleasure with the lessons of fear drilled into them since boyhood. Otto no longer hesitated. He savored his piece slowly, closing his eyes as if each bite were a meditation, a rebellion against the years of suspicion and doubt. Lieutenant Nakamura watched with the detached precision of someone cataloging human behavior. She noticed the small acts of hesitation, the glances exchanged, the furtive sniffing before a piece entered a mouth. "Trust is built slowly," she said once, speaking quietly to Otto as he carried a stack of trays back to the mess hall. "The law gives you rights, yes, but understanding those rights, believing in them, that takes longer." Otto nodded, though he barely understood. His mind kept replaying the chocolate, its bittersweet reality colliding with everything he had been taught. The Americans weren't monsters. They were orderly, meticulous, governed by laws that protected even their enemies. But could he, or any of the others, believe that fully? Or was it simply another trick? Klaus remained skeptical. He avoided the chocolate, claiming he could taste the deception, even as he watched men around him grow braver, lighter, almost human again. Otto tried to talk to him, to explain the taste, the law, the calm certainty of Nakamura's presence, but Klaus only shook his head. "You are soft," he spat one afternoon. "You let yourself be fooled. Don't you see? This sweetness, this comfort, is a trap. They are teaching you to forget the truth of the war." Otto wanted to argue, to insist that survival didn't have to be betrayal, but the words caught in his throat. The truth was, every piece of chocolate, every clean bed, every measured ration made him feel both guilty and grateful. Could pleasure coexist with fear? Could trust coexist with suspicion? He didn't yet have an answer. In the barracks, small lessons unfolded. The men began to interact in ways they hadn't since capture. Otto noticed laughter in the mess hall, the soft shuffle of camaraderie replacing the stiff, tense posture of fear. He taught another prisoner, Heinrich, the proper way to unwrap a chocolate square without tearing the foil, joking quietly as he demonstrated. Heinrich laughed, a dry, hesitant sound that surprised them both. At night, the prisoners would gather around small fires or sit in the barracks, quietly peeling off wrappers and examining each square like they were fragile treasures. They shared stories, whispered confessions of hunger and fear, and slowly the chocolate became more than a treat. It became a symbol, a fragile bridge between worlds, a proof that not every American was cruel, that survival did not have to be treacherous. Otto found himself thinking constantly about Nakamura. She moved through the camp with mechanical care, enforcing rules without malice, ensuring safety without favor. Her presence made the chocolate safe, but it also made him question what safety truly meant. Was it law? Was it kindness? Or was it simply the absence of cruelty, measured and controlled, like the very squares they now held in trembling hands? That evening Otto unwrapped another piece, letting it dissolve slowly on his tongue. Each bite carried memory and doubt, pleasure and guilt intertwined. Somewhere beneath the desert stars he realized that survival was no longer just endurance. It was learning to navigate a world that refused to be simple. And for the first time, he wondered if he could ever reconcile sweetness with the weight of truth. The days stretched into weeks. Chocolate became routine, yet routine did not erase suspicion. Otto noticed it in subtle ways. Furtive glances when a tray passed by, whispered warnings from those still clinging to old lessons of fear. He could feel the weight of expectation pressing on him, the unspoken rule that to enjoy this sweetness was to betray the memory of the suffering they had endured, the comrades who had died, the towns burned in Europe. Klaus remained the fiercest skeptic, watching Otto and the others with sharp eyes. One afternoon, as Otto and two other prisoners shared a piece of chocolate under the shade of the mess hall awning, Klaus approached, hands clenching and unclenching. "You think it's real?" he demanded. "Do you? Or are you blind? They feed us sweets to weaken us. They make us soft, dependent. You are letting them undo you." Otto said nothing at first. He chewed slowly, the rich flavor coating his tongue, his mind racing. Could something so simple, chocolate, be dangerous? Or was danger in the mind, in the expectations of cruelty he had carried like armor for months? He glanced at the other two prisoners. Their eyes, wide with disbelief, mirrored his own internal conflict. Lieutenant Nakamura appeared silently at the edge of the mess hall, clipboard in hand. Her expression betrayed nothing, but Otto could feel her eyes on him, steady and assessing. "The chocolate is not poisoned," she said simply in German. "No one will harm you for eating it. That is law. That is fact." What you do with it is your choice. Otto wanted to argue, to shout that choice had been taken from them for months, that trust had been ripped from their lives like weeds from the soil. Yet the words felt hollow. All he could do was take another bite, letting the sweetness linger, letting disbelief and relief fight for dominance in his chest. That night, the barracks were quiet. The men gathered in small groups, some reading, some quietly talking, others simply staring at the thin glow of the desert moon through the barred windows. Otto clutched another square of chocolate like a lifeline, pondering the absurdity of it. How could something so innocuous carry such power? Power to provoke fear, wonder, guilt, and relief all at once. He began to notice other effects of trust emerging in small, almost imperceptible ways. Heinrich laughed more freely now, speaking in low, conspiratorial tones about small jokes from home. A younger prisoner, Wilhelm, taught himself to fold origami from discarded ration wrappers, sharing his creations with Otto and the others. Even Klaus, still reluctant, began to observe quietly, studying the chocolate rituals with suspicion softened into reluctant curiosity. Lieutenant Nakamura maintained her vigilance. She corrected minor infractions without anger, redistributed work details fairly, and ensured that rules were followed to the letter. The men started noticing patterns: fairness, predictability, absence of malice. It was disorienting. Otto found himself questioning not the chocolate, but the framework of care surrounding it. Were Americans truly capable of such consistency? Could the law, the Geneva Convention, truly shape behavior so fundamentally? In the quiet of the barracks that night, Otto unwrapped another piece. The chocolate was now a symbol, proof that survival did not require bitterness, that comfort could exist even amidst loss and fear. Yet shadows of doubt remained, whispering that trust might still be a fragile illusion. He held the piece to his lips, knowing he would eat it, yet uncertain if he would ever fully believe in its safety. 2 months into captivity, Otto had settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Breakfast, work details, chocolate, rest. Yet normalcy was deceptive. Rumors drifted through the camp. Some POWs spoke of news from Europe. Others whispered about the fates of towns, families, and comrades left behind. Every sweet bite of chocolate now carried a bitter aftertaste, the pleasure of survival shadowed by guilt for those who had not survived. One afternoon, a Red Cross letter arrived for Otto. His hands trembled as he tore open the envelope, bracing for the worst. The words on the page struck him like a hammer. His parents' home in Dresden had been destroyed, his younger sister injured, barely alive, his brother missing. For a long moment, he could not breathe. The chocolate he had been savoring, the beds he had slept in, the sunlight he had felt on his face, they felt obscene. Klaus noticed the letter before anyone else did. "See," he spat, "this is the cost of indulgence. You eat chocolate while your family burns." Otto wanted to defend himself, to argue that survival was not betrayal, that enjoying a piece of chocolate did not erase the world's horrors. But words failed him. He only stared at the small squares on the tray, their sweetness now tainted by the cruel weight of reality. Lieutenant Nakamura approached quietly, her presence calm but commanding. "You grieve," she said in German. "You feel guilt. That is human. But your survival does not make you a traitor. Eating chocolate, resting, following the law, they do not diminish the lives of those lost. They preserve you, so that one day you can bear witness, can rebuild, can teach others what happened." Otto wanted to believe her, but the words felt hollow in the shadow of destruction. How could a piece of chocolate, how could the orderly routines of Camp Harmon counterbalance the chaos, the fire, the loss? Yet Nakamura did not falter. She walked among the men, checking their work, ensuring rations, watching with a careful patience that demanded trust, whether they wanted to give it or not. That night Otto unwrapped a square reluctantly. Its smooth, bittersweet surface melted on his tongue, bringing a memory of delight from weeks earlier. But alongside it came the weight of absence, of burned homes, of family torn apart. He realized that survival was not simple. Comfort could coexist with grief. Pleasure could coexist with guilt. Trust could coexist with fear. And the chocolate, simple, innocent chocolate, was the first bridge to understanding that duality. The barracks grew quiet as men retreated to their bunks, clutching letters, chocolate, or small tokens from home. Otto lay awake, staring at the desert moon through the barred window. He thought about the sweetness on his tongue, the bitter reality of the war, the strange calm of Lieutenant Nakamura, and the law that governed their days. In the quiet he began to understand that life in captivity was not merely survival. It was learning to navigate contradictions, pleasure with guilt, safety with suspicion, trust with doubt, and most painfully, living with both at once. Spring arrived over Camp Harmon, brushing the desert with a subtle warmth that promised life beyond the fences. Otto moved through the barracks with a quiet awareness of the chocolate squares that had once seemed a threat and had now become a fragile emblem of survival. Each unwrapped piece was a reminder the world could still hold sweetness, even in the aftermath of destruction. Lieutenant Nakamura called a gathering one afternoon. The men assembled in the mess hall, eyes wary, expecting orders or reprimands. Instead, she spoke of the Geneva Convention, of their rights, of the fairness and consistency that governed the camp. Then she distributed another tray of chocolate, smiling faintly. "Eat," she said, "not because you must, but because you may. Not as a trap, but as proof. Life continues, even here." Otto hesitated, but he took a piece, feeling its weight between his fingers. He unwrapped it, inhaling the faint aroma of cocoa, sugar, and something almost impossible, freedom. As he bit into it, he realized he could taste more than sweetness. He could taste resilience, humanity, and the strange ordered mercy of the captors who had defied everything he had been taught to expect. The other prisoners followed suit. Laughter, hesitant at first, began to ripple through the room. Some whispered stories of home, others of lost friends, and gradually the barracks began to feel less like a prison and more like a place where men could exist without constant fear. Even Klaus, the eternal skeptic, allowed himself a bite, nodding quietly, his eyes softening as he acknowledged a truth long resisted. Survival did not demand the abandonment of conscience. In the following days, Otto began helping others adjust to the new rhythm of the camp. He shared chocolate carefully, instructing younger prisoners on portioning, on patience, on savoring each bite instead of consuming greedily. It became more than sustenance. It became a ritual, a lesson in trust and restraint, a bridge between the old world of fear and the new world they were learning to navigate. Evenings were spent under the desert stars. Men talked quietly, wrote letters, or simply listened to the wind sweeping across the sand. Chocolate, once a symbol of suspicion and danger, now signified continuity, a subtle proof that the law could preserve humanity, even in war. Otto found himself smiling at small things, the way the foil crinkled in his fingers, the faint bitterness that lingered after each bite, the camaraderie forming quietly around shared indulgences. When the camp finally received word of liberation, the men assembled to leave with quiet dignity. Otto carried his few possessions carefully, including the remaining chocolate, which he now regarded as sacred. It was not indulgence, nor was it sin. It was a reminder of the fragility of trust, the endurance of humanity, and the unexpected sweetness that could survive even in a world poisoned by war. As the desert sun rose behind the fences one last time, Otto glanced at Lieutenant Nakamura, who nodded once, stoic and unreadable. He understood then that chocolate had been more than a ration. It had been a lesson, a test, a fragile bridge between fear and understanding. And as he stepped into the waiting trucks, he bit into one last square, tasting survival, guilt, hope, and the strange redemption that came from something as simple and as miraculous as American chocolate.